One of the first key concepts and one of the big drivers of investing is starting. I mean, just getting started in general. In particular, there's great advantages if you start early. So we're going to really look at this idea of starting early in investing, even when you might not have much to invest if you're a younger or newer investor, but also looking at the later in the life cycle too, where you might be a little bit older and maybe you're trying to catch up or you're trying to get maybe started more with investing as well. Can you do it and how do you do it? So we're going to look at that whole concept of starting early and then also look at, and that's really hopefully never too late for you depending on what your goals are. Now, if we look at like Albert Einstein, the E equals MC squared guy, theory of relativity and all that, but one of his most famous quotes from Albert Einstein is that the most powerful force in the universe is compound interest. Maybe you've heard of this before. It's not necessarily a new concept. It goes back even way before Einstein, but he framed it real well. I mean, here's a person who talks about, the universe and all that, and he's saying that compound interest is so powerful, and it is. And it's all about that for us, the personal investors, the folks who are investing for maybe retirement, financial independence, college, whatever it might be, these goals that we have, and compounding is what helps us to get there. But to take advantage of compounding, we got to start, right? And the earlier you start, the bigger the advantage of compounding will be for you. And I'll demonstrate this to you so you can see how this works here. But understand that as your investor, the compounding is going to work for you, but also it can work against you because there's this thing called inflation, right? Inflation being prices are always going up. I mean, if you bought a gallon of milk today, well, it's a lot more expensive if you bought a gallon of milk 50 years ago or 50 years before that. That's inflation, prices rising. So we need our investments to continue to rise faster than inflation and compound at a faster rate too. And that's how we can be successful. So let's see the power of compounding in action, right? And the advantages of starting early. Okay, I'm in a part of the internet here. I went to a site called MoneyChimp. MoneyChimp has some nice, interesting calculators you can use to calculate different things on investing. You can see on the right here side, we're looking at compound interest, and that's what we're going to look at. But they can do, present value, get into retirement investing, mortgages, all sorts of stuff. But the one that's probably used the most is their compound interest calculator. You can find it up here at moneychimp.com. Calculator compound interest, or if you just search MoneyChimp compound interest or compound interest calculator, you'll find it. And this is a nice, really easy tool to really look at the advantages and the impact of compounding and starting early. And then in our next lesson, when we talk about how much to invest, we're going to use this too to show you the impact of increasing your investments even just a little bit. So we're going to play some things with this calculator here and see the impact of starting early would be, for example. And then we'll look at, in the same calculator about catching up as well. So let's say we're just getting started. Let's do this one first as far as the getting started. So current principal, how much do we have invested right now, is 0. So you can see right here in the middle in the calculator. And let's say at every annual addition, let's keep it real simple. Let's say I'm going to put in, I'm going to use dollars. You know what? I have over 148 different countries for students that are from these different countries. So if you're using euros or yen or whatever you might be using, kroner, whatever it might be, just kind of substitute that in for you, or rupee, just substitute it in. But I'll just say US dollars because that's how this calculator happens to be set up. So let's say annually, let's say I'm just putting in $300 a month, so let's say $3,600 a year. We can do much better than that, but let's just start small. We're getting started. Maybe we do less than that. Who knows? But let's start with $300. You can go in and play with these numbers as well on your own. And let's say we're 25 years old, maybe we're out of college or university, we paid off some loans and we're getting started investing. So let's say we want to invest for 30 years, right? So that'll take us to age 55. We're starting at 25 and we'll put a pretty conservative interest rate in here. Let's say 6%. People ever say to you, oh, you can put 10%, 12%, that's not really realistic over a long period of time. I believe, at least the markets don't show it, but 6% is a pretty obtainable number. You can go a little higher than that if you wanted, or less is fine too. So let's say over a 30-year period of getting started early and going for 30 years, if I calculate that, well, that's $284,000 just with $300 a month US. That might be a lot, that might be a little, once again, adjusted for your cost of living, your expenses and all that too. But we would end up at the bottom there, as you see, with a little over $284,000 by doing it over a 30-year period. So starting early can be real impactful because if we started later with these same numbers, let's say only 20 years to grow, well, now instead of 284, we're down to 132. Just that 10-year less difference made all the difference in the world. So you can calculate, and it's calculating at the end here. And I'm just doing this, this annual calculation is what I'm doing. Okay, so that's 20 years. Now let's say we went 40 years to age 65, maybe more of a traditional retirement age. Same 6% interest, same $300 a year, or $300 a month for $3,600 a year. And what do we got now? Well, now we're at $557,000. So you can see starting early was a difference between 180 or 100 some thousand dollars. Let's say we had 40 here, so we're at 557 versus 20. Oops, excuse me, versus 20. And then we're at 132. So that starting early can make a big difference. And then if you adjust a couple other things, well, maybe instead of 6%, we get 6.5%, just a little bit more. And maybe we've gotten raises, or as we go through our career, instead of $600 a year, maybe we end up doing, let's say, $7,000 a year. And we could, maybe you could even do better. Oh, that looks like 70,000. That would be pretty good. So 7,000 a year. So now what happens? A little bit more interest rate, same long period of time, a little bit more each on an annual contribution, still starting with zero, no inheritance or anything like that. And look, now we're over $1 million, $1.2 million. So you can see how these numbers interact together, but that starting out sooner, to get that 40 year of compounding is so impactful versus, let's say we only did it for 20 years, right? Now instead of 1.2 million, boy, look at that, now we're at 271,000. So you can see graphically or numerically here the importance of starting early. Now let's say we only have that 20-year time horizon. Maybe we're starting we're at 45 years old, we've got nothing, we're starting there. Well, that's, maybe we can bump this number up from 7,000. If you're 40 years old, maybe you're able to earn more money, so maybe put some more money, be more austere. And maybe we're doing 15,000 a year, really bumping that up. And maybe we do have something, we're 40 years old, so maybe instead of having zero, maybe we have already $50,000 saved. So we are not starting from zero. Now let's see, even over a 20-year time horizon, 15,000 a year, start with a little bit of money or $50,000, maybe more a little, we're now at $758,000. So depending on pensions, Social Security, other types of pensioning type things, maybe that's enough on your cost of living to get you there. But versus, let's say, not doing anything at all. So the key on this, and where this calculator can come in handy, is go to MoneyChimp.com, go to compound interest calculator, and then you input your numbers that you have right now and input those numbers to see what you really have, so it's more realistic for you. The key takeaway from this is the longer the time horizon, the more impactful it is. I mean, if I just add 5 more years on this one example, of going to 25 years, so then what happens? My 758 now becomes over $1 million again. So play with this calculator and really understand the importance of not only starting early, but just getting started. Just getting started at all is very, very impactful. Okay, so time can really be on your side, right? So have that long time horizon. Now, how do you find the money to kind of do that, right? I mean, what about existing debt and things out there? Should I pay off my debt first and all that? Well, my recommendation is to get money into the investment cycle, to get used to that, get into that habit or behavior. And next lesson we'll talk about how much, but getting in there is very, very important. Now, if you look at it from just a mathematical standpoint, from an interest rate standpoint and all that, you want to pay off some of that debt, particularly, let's say, like a high interest credit card, which can be really exorbitant interest rates versus maybe a very low interest rate on maybe a mortgage or on a home mortgage that might even have some tax advantages to it as well. And paying off your car and paying off student loans and all those things, and building up an emergency fund, all those things are very critical. But the key part on this first key principle is to get started. Even if it's a small amount, even if it's $100 a month or whatever, to get started and have that compounding work for you. Now let's talk about how much to invest, or how do we get going with the amount of money to invest.